Hi my babies, you are now watching the Lit Stoop. So, it's your girl Biblio Blue. We're back. February was a very short month, even though we're on a leap year. So I'm here with a little wrap up of the four books that I read this month, and kind of the things that I explored within their themes, and of course a wrap up of Blackathon 2020. So let's just jump right into the video. So first things first, I actually dropped a new series on my channel. It's called The Binge, and I used the first book that I read this month, The Sun Is Also a Star, as the first episode of The Binge. So there's not that much I'm gonna get into about this book, but you can definitely check that video out. It's with me and my good friend Dominique, and we get into why or which one you should binge The Sun Is Also a Star, the book, versus the film. Now, go check that video. You could definitely binge this book. It is worth your time. Do not even on a bored, rainy day, pull up that film. Not on Hulu, not on Netflix, not on just any of them. There's so many services, I don't even know what else. Not Zeus. Don't do it. Spend your 2 to 3 hours, just read the book. It's a fun read. It'll go by easy. Support Black writers. Just... Please. So I read The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon as a part of Blackathon 2020. And yeah, that book was actually very different than I thought it was going to be. It centers a young teenager named Natasha, whose family is being deported that day, and she actually falls in love with Daniel, this Korean American young man who is pretty much skipping out his college applications, his college interviews, just to be with her. And it becomes a whirlwind story that takes place over one single day. So I already have a whole video about how I felt about the book and the film, but just as a recap, the book is amazing. That's it. That's the recap. The book is amazing. Go read it. It is equally as juicy and deep as it is lighthearted and mushy and all of that good stuff. So it was really good to like start off the month by reading something by a Black author, by a Black woman, that didn't have that much tragedy in it. That was more kind of a love story of the ages, a coming of age story at the same time. So I really enjoyed that book, specifically the little vignettes that she threw in there, that the writer threw in there around other characters' stories. I thought that was super unique and dope. But you can check out my other video on The Binge and hear all of my thoughts. Next up, I read The Mother of Black Hollywood by Jenifer Lewis. So like I said before, Jenifer Lewis is a powerhouse entertainer and actress, and has played the mother on almost every hit show and movie you can think of, from the Tina Turner Story to A Different World to currently playing the grandmother on Blackish. I decided to hit up my library app, shout out to Libby, where's my sponsorship, and to get this book on audiobook, because Jenifer Lewis is a handful. More than a handful, y'all. She's a lot. So listening to audiobook, I already knew that it was going to be amazing because I heard the sample, and she does her own audiobook. A lot of people hit me up and ask me about audiobooks versus regular physical books or ebooks, and I would say the mark of a good audiobook is really all in the narrator. It's not even about the content of the book. There are plenty of books that are brilliant that I would not read as audiobooks. This one though, probably the best audiobook I've ever read. Okay, Jenifer Lewis gives you even more than I probably imagine you get in the book. I mean, if she's talking about a high note that she hit, she's gonna sing you that note in the audiobook, okay? And the audiobook is a memoir of her life and her experiences in Black Hollywood, especially as someone who has a mental illness. I believe she's diagnosed with being bipolar. She's been in therapy for well over 17 years within this story. She talks about everything from Blackish through all of her different love stories with men, through her experiences in Black Hollywood with the likes of Loretta Devine and Gregory Hines. It's like an incredible read, and sometimes it's so fantastical you don't even remember it's her life story. You're kind of like, what? That did not happen. She's like, yes it did. That's her in the audiobook. So it's like having a conversation with her. I adored this book. It was so funny. It was so intriguing. There is a lot of weight to it. There are trigger warnings, talks about sexual assault within the book. Of course, a deep lens within mental illness within the book. But Jenifer Lewis is just, she's just a joy. I mean, even within that, she sings you songs throughout the audiobook. She really puts on different accents when she plays different characters of her life. And she really gives you the down and dirty. So if you're a person who is shy about things like sex or things like things that you just would experience when you're in the limelight, don't read the book. But if you're a person who's interested in learning more about a woman who has really made her own mark on Hollywood, if you're interested in reading more about a Black woman and her struggles with mental health, if you're interested just in a perspective of being entertained, if you're like, I'm willing to be entertained, you got to pick up this book and you got to get it on audio. Now, if you buy the regular book, I'm not going to say it's not going to be as enjoyable, but it's not going to be as enjoyable. So there's nothing like Jenifer Lewis herself telling you the ups and the downs and the triumphs and the pitfalls of her career and overall of her life. I felt really connected to her. The book made me want to go revisit even some of those films and some of those shows, because I don't really think that we give Black people their flowers all of the time. And reading Jenifer's life story made me be like, no, I gotta go give her some of my coins. I have to enjoy and celebrate her while she's still here with us, because she has done a lot for the culture. Okay. It's also always interesting hearing about Black people specifically, which there are not a lot. It's interesting hearing about Black people specifically because there's not a lot of literature on how we deal with mental health, on our different experiences through therapy. And so that was also intriguing as well. I was just thoroughly impressed by the book, thoroughly entertained, and I definitely recommend it. So there's that on that. Last up on Blackathon 2020, I read 3 books for Blackathon 2020. The third book I read was a reread from at least 7 to 10 years ago, which was Fledgling by the Octavia E. Butler. I'm a huge fan of Octavia's work. I've pretty much read almost every single one of her books except for a series of short stories, because I know once I read it, that's it. There's going to be no more Octavia books coming out. I can't deal with that. So I need to put that off as long as I can. I decided to reread Fledgling for the contemporary team because we were asked to read a book in which the character challenges the ideas of Blackness. Now, Fledgling, I read the book and I remembered some of it, but there was nothing like rereading this book. It's amazing. Basically, Fledgling is about this young woman who is a Black woman vampire. She's an experiment, and she wakes up on her own, injured and hurt and alone, to find out that her whole family line has been wiped out. She finds some human people to love her and help her, and then eventually she runs into some vampires and starts to unravel kind of like the history of how she got to the point of being hurt and injured and alone. When she wakes up at the beginning of the novel, she has no recollection of her life before then, so it takes a while for her to even understand what it is to be a vampire, what it is to be Black, and what it is to be a woman. Those concepts are not readily available to her due to the amnesia, I guess, that she suffers when these people try to kill her and wipe out her family. What happens in this book, y'all, spoiler alert, why is Octavia such, like, she's such a prolific writer, and no matter the species, she really centers the black femme narrative, and like I just can't get enough of it. So in spoilers, vampires are traditionally white men, pale, you know, tall, crusty. They are usually made to be sexy. People are like, ooh, look at Twilight, whatever. They're not interesting. What is interesting is having this black femme vampire navigate this world. In this world, there is no such thing as her. She is an experiment that vampires tried out and then realized that her blackness, her melanin, allows her to have more of an advantage over them than they would like. And just like white people, they decided that wasn't gonna go down. So they wiped out her family line, but she survives. Also in this story, women are stronger than men. Duh. You didn't need a story for that, but I like the way that it was put out there. They go through this towards the end of the book when she finds out all of these details about who's after her, who killed her family. There becomes this like ancient trial in which they go through. They put this other vampire family on trial in this kind of ancient vampire ritual of how they solve issues within this kind of world. And she takes the stand, and there are all these other details and things that happen, but it is so intriguing. The characters are well developed, the dialogue is so interesting, how they interact with race and blackness is so interesting in this book. I think, however, that this was allegedly supposed to be one of many books, although we lost Octavia Butler, so the book does end on kind of, not like a cliffhanger, that you get answers, but there's definitely more to the story. You want to follow this young woman, her name is Choi. You want to follow Choi's story, you want to see what happens to her, how she matures in this world, if they end up accepting her as a black woman vampire. And those are kind of like the questions you're left with, because unfortunately, Octavia can't give us the answers. So still worth the read. It's incredible. It's so fascinating, and just the play on melanin, which is really a play on the vampire narrative of them sleeping all day and her being able to stay up at night because her skin and the sun don't have like an opposing relationship. I said it before and I'll say it again. Octavia Butler is the one. Y'all need to go pick up Fledgling if you've never read it. It's incredible. Now, I know I talked a lot of mess at the beginning of February about all the books I was going to read, but I did not read all of those books. After Fledgling, I was going through a lot of my life. That really like took just like the air out of me. It was such a good book. I really wasn't in the mood to read another like heart-wrenching book. Ironically, just throughout the months, I often just place holds on books through the library app that I want to read in general, like that are on my read list. So by the time they become available, hopefully I'll be in a space to read them. One of those books became available and I really wanted to read it, and it is not written by a black author. I know, y'all. I know. But it's written by an Asian author, and so I feel like it still counts. So I read, for the last book of February, Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. So as you know, I've read her book Emergency Contact in January, and I loved it. This is her second book, most recent book that came out, and I finally got it on the library app, and I was like, let me go just read that for a little bit because it's gonna make me feel, you know, cute and good. They're usually love stories. This book made me feel stressed. Let me be honest with y'all. So the main character is this young man who is going through a lot. His name is Pablo Neruda. I know, y'all. He's not even Spanish, but his name is Pablo Neruda. He's part Korean and part Pakistani, and he's going through a lot. He works at a bodega overnight, and he is lost. He dropped out of NYU. He moved out his mom's house. He lives with 4 roommates. Y'all know the New York story. Let's not even act like we don't know that story. And so over his shift at night, he meets this young woman and he's instantly into her. She's buying all these weird snacks. He's really into weird snacks. They get to talking and he realizes that she's actually a celebrity. She's a pop star and her name is Leanna Smart. And he's like, what is Leanna Smart doing at 4 or 5 in the morning in this random bodega? They end up starting this whirlwind romance, which basically sets him even further back in his own personal life. Now y'all, what? If I get with a celebrity, I'm hoping that you gonna push my life forward. You feel me? Like push the agenda. I mean, ever since he starts, I guess you could call it dating or just running around with Leanna Smart whenever she wants, he loses his job. His bills start getting high. All his credit cards get maxed out. He about to get sued for all the money he owes. He misses his deadline to reapply to NYU. He misses a interview to go to a different college. I'm reading this book so frustrated. Like, what is what is this man going through? Like, anyway. Long story short, he's having a good time with her and then he gets to a breaking point. He's been treating his family like shit and he's been not talking to his friends and not showing up for work, and eventually he just has a whole break, like a breakdown, and it's the wildest thing you've ever read. He's going through so much. Basically, just spoiler non-spoiler, the end of the book, he actually does pull it together in various ways. He goes through a whole transformation, complete 180 from the jerk that he was pretty much most of the book. And he does it by ending his relationship with Leanna Smart. I was a little confuzzled by that, but sure. And like a book, you would think at the end they're gonna get back together, but then he realizes at the end he is his own fairy tale, kind of, in like a cheesy way. Like, he's his own fairy tale and he actually doesn't need to get lost in her life to be someone, that he can be someone in his own life. And they do have this interesting meetup in the very last chapter that I won't really go into, but really it's just like, it's a book that goes very up and down, specifically because you're only following this one character and this man is up and down. He is down, like way down, like down, and he is up, okay? He is up and down in these relationships and he finally pulls it together, gets his life together, and that's like, celebrate, everybody loves it, but oh my gosh, it was a lot. It was so crazy to get to that point. I did enjoy the read though. It was very page turner, like I was in it. I did not enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Emergency Contact, however. I just felt like that book was like real sweet and made more sense for me for whatever reason. This book, at points, this main character, because he's the only voice, he is so annoying. I was just like, whoo, you are a frustrated main character. There's a lot of times when you do not want to root for this man, but it's still like an interesting read, and it did get me out of the whole realm of where I was before in terms of reading about, you know, like race and trauma, and there was just like a lot of heavy books this month, but that was like a good end pick me up. So I still recommend it. It was just a lot. It was a lot. With that being said, those were my 4 reads for this month. Very different from each other. I'm hoping to have just as a variety for March, but I guess you'll just have to stay tuned and see what I do with that. Okay? Okay. So, thank you for joining me. Let me know in the comments below if you've read any of the books I'm talking about, or what book you did read this month that was surprisingly interesting for you, that you didn't expect to have the turns that it had or the plot twist that it had. Please subscribe to my channel and come back here for just more goodness, more episodes of The Binge, more unique things coming through on the channel. I holla at you. Bye.